Hi! In this video we'll look at the issue of listening at university. This includes listening to lectures, but also listening to other students during discussions and tutorials, and to video content from the internet, like this video you're listening to now. In this video we'll look at some research on the topic of listening at university. And as we look at the research, we'll briefly have a look at some basic research tricks. For example, we'll model finding some research and looking at the basic credibility of the research, and also how to find some information quickly without reading too much. We'll examine evidence of common issues for listening comprehension, and we'll also find some evidence for effective solutions for improving your listening comprehension. However, the main focus of this video should be on your listening comprehension. So while you are listening to the video, think about what you're doing. Are you taking notes? How often do you stop the video and look at your notes and think about what you are hearing? So let's begin by finding some research. In this video I'm going to use Google Scholar to search for listening comprehension at university. And I'm particularly looking for articles that are cited by many people. This means that they are being used by other authors to write their journal articles as well, which suggests that an article is well written and interesting and reliable and credible. So this one, for example, has been cited by 113, so that's not bad, but I do notice that it's 1997, which is quite old. This one, on the other hand, is 2016, which is much more recent and has been cited by more people. So this is much more popular and much more reliable. It's more recent and therefore I'm more interested in it. And also it has a direct link to the PDF, which means I can click here and go directly to the whole article rather than click around on the internet a lot, which is what will happen if I click here. Now here is one that attracted my attention because it mentions the student difficulties towards listening comprehension, and it also mentions the education department, which means that this article is definitely focused on university problems for listening comprehension, and also it's 2017, which makes me more interested in it. It's got a PDF link as well, which makes my life much easier. But let's look at the internet version first. So if I click on this link, I come to the internet version, and you can see that there is no full text. It says full text PDF. So if I don't click on the direct PDF link, I have to maybe click here, or then maybe there's a link over this side or this side. But it's just going to slow you down slightly if you do it this way. So when we look on the website, we can see that it's volume 3, number 2. That means, by the way, that volume is the number of years. So this journal has been published for 3 years. This is volume 3, year 3. Number 2 means each year it's published maybe 2 or 3 times. So this is the second publication in the 3rd year. Now, how does that affect credibility? Well, a journal that's been published for 150 years, which some journals have been, is very reliable, very credible. The longer a journal has been around, the more credible it is. This is quite a new journal, so that does mean that it's not quite so credible, but it's good enough. I am content that this is a genuine academic article. So let's look at it in some more detail. This is the whole article, and I can see it is 18 pages long. And that means that I could spend maybe half an hour reading all of this article, but I don't want to do that. How many sentences am I actually going to put in my essay from this article? Probably only 1 or 2, right? 1 or 2 sentences is all I want. So I don't want to read 18 pages. How do I get to sentences very quickly? Instead, I look at the abstract. Now this is a summary of the whole article in one paragraph. It includes all of the major information, the introductory information, and also all of the conclusions. So if I'm lucky, I will find everything I need to know in this abstract. So let's have a look in more detail. When I read the abstract, I can find, okay, so it is based on 3 factors. So listening comprehension problems come in 3 types: listening material problems, listener factor problems, and physical setting problems. And here is some of those examples of problems: accents, pronunciation, concentration, bad quality. These are all in the abstract. And this is really gold, right? This is what I want. This perhaps is all I need for my essay. So I've saved reading 18 pages by just focusing on the abstract. Now, I want to take some notes about this. So because I'm a good researcher, I'm going to write down the source of the material first. So where does this come from? If you have Google Scholar Button, which I won't introduce to you in this video, if you're interested, I'll introduce it in another video later on, or you can investigate it for yourself. The Google Scholar Button allows me to find the reference for this very quickly. So I can click on Google Scholar Button and you can see that the whole Harvard reference for the research is here. So I'll grab that and cut and paste it into my notes. And also I'll grab a link to that journal, that web link, and I'll put that in my notes as well. And here are the notes I've written for the abstract I just wrote. So there were 3 types of problems, and there are the problems listed underneath the different types. When I look at another article with a very similar title, I am happy because many of the problems mentioned in the previous one, quality of recorded materials, accent, unfamiliar vocabulary, speed of listening, these are all the same as the previous one. But there is one difference: cultural differences is also mentioned, so I'm going to add that to my notes, cultural differences as well. And I'm going to make a note of the new article. This is the new article, and another link to that address. Okay, so these are some of the problems of listening at an academic level. How do we improve these listening skills? How do we deal with the problems of accents and pronunciation? How do we improve our vocabulary and lack of concentration? So stop the video now for a moment perhaps and have a think about these problems in your own situation. Which problems do you think affect you the most? How would you deal with some of these problems? Okay, let's have a look at what the research says. So this article particularly, the literature review, does have some solutions to the problems it raises, but it's quite complicated compared to the previous one. They talk about cognitive strategies, and in the next one, metacognitive strategies. So the language and the presentation of the solutions to the problems are much more complicated than the problems themselves. However, if I have a look at them in detail, they break down to basically strategies before and during is cognitive strategies. So cognitive means thinking. So these are the thinking strategies. Before you listen, you should be predicting and planning what you're going to hear. While you're listening, you should be active. You should be doing something, thinking about what you are hearing, not just passive and going to sleep. After you listen, metacognitive strategies are important. So actually the listening is followed by evaluating, summarizing, processing what you have noted down and what you have heard. If you do these activities, then the chances of you one, understanding, and two, remembering what you've heard are much, much higher. So there's one article that I found that deals with all of these in a more effective and easy to read way, and that's this article on the impact of note-taking strategies. So it talks particularly about a clear link between note-taking and listening comprehension ability. And it talks about the Cornell method of note-taking in particular. So, what is the Cornell method? Basically, the research is saying that note-taking while listening is essential because it helps you stay active. It helps you process what you hear. But it can do a lot more than that. In the Cornell method, you begin by planning your notes by dividing the page into 3 areas. You draw 2 lines, top to the bottom, and then across the bottom here. And it gives you 3 areas, one for notes, one for the questions or keywords, and another one for summary. So, for example, you write some notes on what you hear as you hear it, and then when you finish that, after the listening, you start to add titles or questions or keywords that tell you what are the sections of the listening, how is this listening divided. And this second step helps you process and think about and remember what you've heard. And finally, you might write a summary of what you've heard. So each page would have a quick summary, only a sentence or two, about what is it basically, what is the essential message of each page. So this is the Cornell method of note-taking, and it's very highly recommended. It allows you to plan by writing a title and by dividing your page up. How are you going to take notes? It allows you to process by doing these steps. It reviews what you've heard, which again is a step of processing things. And then I recommend also that you discuss with another student what you have written down. So very often there'll be problems or areas that you didn't understand. So this is your opportunity to take that to somebody else who listened to the lecture or who was part of the tutorial, and maybe just talk about what was it that you missed. Another thing I would recommend is something called sketch notes. This is the idea that you do the Cornell method, sure, but you also add, after you've written the notes, add little pictures and diagrams and thought bubbles, and try and make the notes look more interesting and more well organized. Use things like frames around particularly important ideas, quotations, separate notes out into different sections, use bullet points of different types, and maybe use a pattern across the page to divide your ideas and your notes this way as well. Okay, so that's the end of this video, and your next job is to think about all of these things in more detail and decide, are any of these ideas going to help you improve your listening? Have you used any of these ideas to take notes during this presentation, for example? Try again, go back to the beginning and maybe use sketch notes and Cornell method to make a full note-taking session out of this listening. Good luck.